Florida Congressman, Freedom Caucus member, and member of the House Financial Services and Oversight Committees, Byron Donalds, is back with me. Congressman, it's always a pleasure. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Maria. How are you?
You voted no on this bill. Walk us through the problems that you had with this bill.
Well, a couple of key things. First, what this bill does, it keeps post-COVID spending levels here in Washington, D.C., and now both parties are saying that the post-COVID world of federal spending is okay, and it's simply not. Everybody understands why we had to plus up money, because the government largely shut down our American economy, but to allow the federal agencies to now be 40 to 50% bigger than they were before the pandemic, I think is just completely irresponsible. Well, Number two,
go ahead.
We cut about $12 billion in year one, but if you go to the bond markets and you're going to raise $4 trillion in new debt, essentially what we cut was the debt service for the new debt. So we're basically treading water. Those are two big reasons why, because the long-term fiscal outlook of our country has not changed. This bill does not do it. This bill is a baby step, but it's not the step that the American people need.
Now, what about the idea that, yeah, this is a baby step, but it's a step in the right direction? I mean, look, let's face it, there are lots of issues that people have raised beyond just the two that you just raised. Defense spending is not keeping up with the way China is spending. There was no money for the border here. The IRS was Kevin McCarthy's big priority in terms of rescinding that money. Much of it, the majority of it, is still in place.
Oh, I have those concerns, and I'll even go one more. The Inflation Reduction Act, or the Inflation No Reduction Act, as I like to call it, the subsidies in that bill for the Green New Deal stay intact. Goldman Sachs is saying it's going to cost us $1.2 trillion. Where are we going to get that money from? Guess what? We're going to borrow that too. So that's going to cost us $1.2 trillion, and these Green New Deal technologies are not sufficient to power our electric grid. So how is that going to help our energy matrix? And how is that going to help our economy over the long term? All those things stay intact. That's why I voted against the bill.
Well, I mean, look, we're all talking about Joe Biden's mental capacity, it seems, every day. Are you saying you think Joe Biden outsmarted Kevin McCarthy?
I think what happened is the pressure in this town from a lot of different interest groups, whether it's defense, whether it's members who, truly believe that the potential of default means that you have to abandon everything else because you have to solve that first. I think those are real pressures in this town. I've talked to members who have those concerns. But at the end of the day, if our fiscal house is not in order, and if we're not making substantive steps towards fixing that, it doesn't matter whether you're concerned about the default or you're concerned about defense. We're all going over the cliff. And this is very different from previous years because our nation has not been $32 trillion in debt. It is now. The federal agencies have not been as big. They are now. And the radical spending from the Democrats has never been this large, and it is now. And in about 10 years, the way we're going, CBO has projected it, OMB has projected it, interest on the debt will be the number one line item in the federal budget. That is outrageous. And we have to make serious steps to avert that.
Yeah, that is really outrageous. You're right. I'm talking about $10 trillion in interest payments alone in the coming decade. What would you have advised the speaker to do differently? Because he said that Biden walled off much of the budget, that he was only allowed to deal with 11% of the budget. And when dealing with just 11%, he was real successful. So what should the Republicans have done if Biden is just walling off the budget and just digging in on these spending caps?
Well, look, the speaker and I have had this conversation. Nobody in this town wanted to deal with Social Security, Medicare, and some of the other drivers that are really pushing our spending to a whole nother level. But in non-defense discretionary spending, and even in some elements of discretionary spending, Washington has to understand and learn the muscle memory of what it means to cut spending responsibly while still being able to execute the functions of the federal government. I think he could have done that here. In terms of the process of how things went down, when it was pretty clear that the White House was not serious about doing anything, my opinion, and I think I've said it on various networks, we should have looked at the Senate, Senate and told the Senate to pass a bill, because the Senate in its entire situation did nothing. As a matter of fact, what they really were trying to do was sabotage any real work to get our fiscal house in order, because you had Chuck Schumer and frankly you had some members of my party who were so tied to defense spending that they're not looking at the debt. They're concerned about defense spending, that they were trying to sabotage any possible deal that could have happened in the House.
Well, what happens now? If it passes the Senate in the coming days, which we're expecting, what do you want to see as a next step to try to get us closer to fiscal sanity?
Well, look, the next fight, we'll see what happens in the Senate. It's still got to get through there. But if that's looking like that's going to occur, it's now going to come into the appropriations battle, and it's going to require us in every aspect of the 12 appropriation bills to actually do the hard work of getting rid of wasteful spending. A funny thing happens in this town. When you show people you can actually vote and get rid of wasteful spending, it gives them the ability to continue to do that work. And you got to start somewhere. Look, this town doesn't even run towards spending. This town actually goes the opposite way. So you got to get them to crawl, you got to get them to walk, you got to get them to run, you got to train them to do it. That's the work that I'm looking at right now.
Well, one way to pull back spending is at the FBI, right? I mean, FBI Director Christopher Wray has confirmed the existence of this single document that has been subpoenaed by Republicans that they say ties Joe Biden to a criminal bribery scheme. Wray is now facing the contempt of Congress after refusing to produce that document, instead telling lawmakers that they can see it in a secure setting. The White House refusing to answer a question after being questioned about Biden's corruption claims. Watch this.
There was a Harvard-Harris poll this month that found that 53% of the public, including a fourth of Democrats, believe, quote, Joe Biden was involved with his son in an illegal influence peddling scheme. So what do you say to the majority of Americans who believe that the president is himself corrupt?
Wow. Jesus. Can I take that question?
The president has spoken to this. The president has spoken to this, and there's nothing to these claims.
Yeah, to be clear, the president has not spoken to this aside from when he told us that he did not have any interaction with Hunter Biden in these business deals during the campaign, Congressman. Is that a way to hold back and to push back on the FBI by holding back spending? What happens now there?
Oh, I totally think so. Not just on this issue, but the fact that we know that the FBI interfered in not one but two presidential elections in 2016 and in 2020. So I think there's definite issues at the FBI that we got to fix. Appropriations is the way, in my view. Now, to Director Wray, this document that Congress first requested and now has subpoenaed, and he's still saying no, I find to be completely outrageous. We don't report to the executive branch and to the federal agencies. Congress has powers of the purse. We do have duties to actually have oversight of the federal agencies. And what's happening in the Biden administration, and it's not just FBI, by the way, it's happening all over this administration, where they are withholding information. They do not respond to congressional inquiries. This is a real violation of separation of powers, and it is a constitutional crisis. I don't use those words lightly. If there's a document that Congress is requesting, the agencies have a responsibility to deliver it. And so if we're going to hold Chris Wray in contempt, I fully support that.
Yeah, I know, but does that do anything? Does this have any bite? I mean, Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress. Nothing happened to him.
At the end of the day, it's about the dollars here, Maria.
Okay.
So I think in the appropriations process, we have to be very serious with the FBI and these other agencies that have been withholding information.
Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, Byron Donalds joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.